Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of Darkness and Light. I'm your host, Wendy, and this is a podcast about myth, magic, and nature. In this episode, we'll be exploring the solar cycle of the Wheel of the Year and the upcoming festivals of Beltaine in the Northern Hemisphere and Samhain in the Southern Hemisphere. We'll look at how these two seasonal festivals, opposite and yet deeply connected, remind us that life and death, just like darkness and light, are inseparable. As this episode lands, the sun has moved into the sign of Taurus, out of fiery Aries and into earthy, grounded Taurus. Our Lady Moon is at her first quarter, waxing and growing bigger, heading towards a Scorpio full moon on May 1st, which corresponds with those festivals of Beltaine and Samhain. It doesn't always. Beltaine and Samhain are always around the 1st of May, and then again around the 31st of October in the opposite hemisphere. But that full moon could be any time around that time, just happens this year's extra magical with the full moon on the date of those festivals. So last episode, our moon was waning, the third quarter waning and growing smaller, so also half lit. The energy is very different now. You can tap into it and feel how this waxing energy is calling us up and out towards this gorgeous full moon, this intense Scorpio full moon. It's a powerful and heightened time. Last episode, we focused on the energy of the moon, and this episode, we're going to be focusing on the energy of the sun, our gorgeous, golden, electrically alive plasma ball of glowing light. To the ancient Greeks, the sun was Helios, the ancient Titan god predating the Olympic gods. And all of the Titans, they're not gods of the thing that they represent, they are the thing that they represent. Helios is the sun. With the moon, we see her changing shape as she moves through her cycles of darkness and light. But with the sun, we witness those cycles of change in the effect that it has on Earth. The different lengths of day and night across the year, creating the shifts of the seasons, moving through that cycle that is the wheel of the year. We see the sun renewed, born new at every midwinter, at every Yule, when the days are shortest and the nights are longest. The moment of the solstice, of the winter solstice, which is around December 21st in the Northern Hemisphere and June 21st in the Southern Hemisphere. At that moment of the solstice, the days begin to grow longer. The sun is reborn, and the energy of the sun that is born at midwinter gains strength through the spring equinox and all the way up to the summer solstice, 6 months opposite the winter solstice, and then right at the peak of his power, when the days are longest and the nights are shortest, the sun's light diminishes and the waning part of the year begins, and the days grow shorter and shorter and shorter until once again it is the winter solstice. So the wheel of the year marks this seasonal cycle with 8 spokes. If you imagine a circle, picture a line running vertically from the top to the bottom. There are solstices, the points of extreme across the planet, the shortest day and longest night, the shortest night and longest day. And then picture a line at right angles, a horizontal line across the circle, creating a cross, a 4-armed cross. And that horizontal line is the equinoxes. The spring equinox, which is around March 21st in the Northern Hemisphere, September 21st in the Southern, and the autumn equinox, which is September in the Northern Hemisphere, March in the Southern. This cross, these 4 spokes of the wheel, are like the corners of the year, these astronomical events that occur whether or not we're noticing them, just like a sunrise or a sunset, a full moon or a dark moon. These events in nature occur at an exact, particular time. That time might fluctuate, the date might change slightly with each changing year, but there will be an exact moment of the solstice, an exact moment when the day is longest and the night shortest. There will be an exact moment of the equinox when day and night are equal across the planet. And then picture a second 4-armed cross that goes diagonally in between the spokes of the solstices and equinoxes. And each of these spokes marks a special seasonal celebration called a cross-quarter day. They are in between the solstices and equinoxes. Between midwinter and spring equinox, we have the festival of Imbolc, the first stirrings of spring. Between spring equinox and summer solstice, we have the festival of Beltaine, spring at its most blooming, beautiful, fertile height. Then between summer solstice and autumn equinox, we have the festival of Lammas, which is also called Lunasa, the first harvest, the first hint of autumn after the hot summer. And then between autumn equinox and midwinter, we have the festival of Samhain. So Samhain and Beltaine are always at exact opposite points of the wheel. They're on that same polarity, and that polarity, astrologically, is always going to be Taurus and Scorpio. In the Northern Hemisphere, Beltaine is always going to be in Taurus season. In the Southern, Samhain will be in Taurus season. And then 6 months later, half another turn around the wheel, when the sun has moved into Scorpio, that's Samhain time in the north, Beltaine in the south. There's always this balance. If we're celebrating Beltaine, then Samhain is happening simultaneously on the other side of the world. And the same is true of Samhain. Beltaine is always coexisting. Well, what these festivals teach us and remind us is that life and death are always coexisting. The energy of Taurus, that earthy energy, is all about life. The beauty of the natural world, magic made manifest. And the energy of Scorpio is connected to the energy of death, of transformation, of release. Together they make a whole. Together they are darkness and light. When we witness the changes of the seasons and choose to celebrate these sacred turning points of the wheel, we're aligning ourselves with nature. We're tuning into that energy of the sun. We're noticing how these seasonal changes mark our land. The springtime sun of the Northern Hemisphere right now is calling flowers to bloom. Birds and insects are active. Days are lengthening. There's a sense of joy. The air is scented. Here in New Mexico, the prairies come alive with flowers in the spring and in the summer. Bright spots of pink and purple, bright yellow zinnias. And these are seasonal markers to me. And in the Southern Hemisphere, that beautiful autumnal light. Our sun is ripening fruit. It's turning the leaves of deciduous trees golden and deep red. It's mellow and beautiful light, sun that is welcome on the skin. Chilly mornings and warm afternoons. Samhain is deep autumn, the third of the 3 harvest festivals of Lammas, and then the autumn equinox, and then Samhain, preparing to harvest the last of the crops, apples and pumpkins, the very last of the summer fruits. The concept of the wheel of the year, which is an important anchor in modern paganism, is based on an ancient Celtic Gaelic seasonal calendar, but we adapt that for our lands and our modern times. Last episode, I talked about observation as an act of ritual. That's what we can bring to these festivals. What's happening on your land, in your local park, in your woodlands, in your own garden. What birds are coming or going? What is sprouting? What is ripening? Adapt this wheel to your landscape, and then it becomes living. This isn't about reconstructing something old. It's about living, immersing ourselves in the living landscape, aligning ourselves with nature's cycles. Beltaine and Samhain coexisting remind us that life and death coexist. Nature teaches us this. Life and death are always coexisting in nature. What we might call life on earth is really life and death on earth. If you go into any landscape on earth, any natural landscape, a beach, a forest, a desert, you'll witness both life and death. Imagine yourself walking in a beautiful green forest and notice the life of those trees. You might see an animal, some birds. Crouch down and look at moss and lichen. But what you'll also notice is death. Last year's leaves decaying into the ground, gifting their nutrients back into the soil. Decaying wood, maybe some animal bones. It's this death that allows life to continue. Picture a beach, the tidal rock pools teeming with life. But you'll also see plenty of shells, which are skeletons. Nature is both life and death. The whole cosmos is life and death. Imagine that you're holding a ball of clay, and we'll think of this ball of clay as Mother Earth, and then break off a little bit of that clay and form it into something that represents life, maybe a tree or an animal or a person. This is one individual expression of life that is actually part of a much bigger whole that is life and death and life and death. This individual life, who is me, who is you, who is that particular tree, that particular animal. We're born, and then we live, and then we die. But we're part of something bigger, this life that never dies, because it is life and death. It's life that continues. It's the pulsing life force of the cosmos that contains death within it. In my written work, I make a distinction between these two expressions of life, that life that is the ball of clay, that is earth, or that is cosmos. I use a capital L. That's life that is the container of both life and death. And then that individual life, that thing that is born and lives and dies, I use a lowercase l. That individual life can merge back into that ball of clay, return to the great collective energy, and then emerge again as something different and blend back into that ball again and just keep emerging again and again in this constant flow of life that comes from death. And that's what Beltaine and Samhain remind us, that spring and autumn coexist, that life and death coexist. One of my absolute favorite mythic stories is the Greek story of Persephone's journey into the underworld. I know I'll be referring to this many times throughout this podcast. It's so rich in wisdom about this life-death life cycle. So in this myth, the young maiden Persephone is abducted against her will by Hades, lord of the underworld. She's the beloved daughter of the goddess Demeter, who is the goddess of the grain, of all things that grow on earth. She's the great nurturing mother. And one day her daughter just disappears. Her beloved Persephone just disappears. And Demeter doesn't know what has happened to her. And she wanders the earth, searching and grieving. And her grief is reflected in the landscape. The earth begins to shrivel up, and the first winter creeps its icy fingers across the land. But meanwhile, in the underworld, Persephone is going through a transformation from flower maiden to underworld queen. Through the trauma of her abduction, she finds her strength. And when she is offered the fruit of the pomegranate by Hades, she eats 6 seeds, and in doing so gains the wisdom of the life-death life cycle, gains the wisdom, the death, that the underworld is part of life. She internalizes the wisdom of the seed, which is both life and death. I made an album dedicated to this myth, and on the album I sing in the voices of Persephone, of Demeter, and also of the goddess Hecate. And Hecate is a titan, like Helios, like Gaia. And she is a titan of the liminal, of the betwixt and the between. And the liminal is a place of change. So while Persephone and Demeter are coming to terms with this great change in their lives, a sense of loss, it's Hecate who guides them because she embodies that change. So on this album, I have Hecate recite this chant about the seed becoming the flower, becoming the fruit, becoming the seed. Out of the fruit, the seed. Out of the seed, the flower. Out of the flower, the fruit, holding the seed. Out of the fruit, the seed. Out of the seed, the flower. Out of the flower, the fruit, holding the seed. Apokarpo, osporos, aposporo, oanthos, apoantho, karpos. And the seed that Persephone eats, the pomegranate, if you've ever eaten a pomegranate, you'll know how incredibly luscious and juicy and messy it is. That blood red juice. And then inside, this incredible profusion of ruby red seeds, life bursting forth. It's this fruit that was chosen to symbolize that mythic quality of life within death and death within life. That seed in the underworld, which in a way Persephone becomes, will rise up to be the fresh green shoot of springtime. So Persephone eats these 6 seeds, and it is decreed that she will spend a month in the underworld for each seed that she has eaten. 6 for the darkness and 6 for the light. Exi yato skotadi ke exi yato phos. 6 for the darkness and 6 for the light. The myth of Persephone aligns with the agricultural cycles of life and death, aligns with the seasons. So when Persephone goes into the underworld, that marks the descent into autumn. When she emerges again, 6 months later, steps out on the surface of the world starts blooming again. That marks spring. In the ancient Gaelic calendar, the festival of Beltaine marked the beginning of the season of light, and the festival of Samhain was the beginning of the season of darkness. 6 for the darkness and 6 for the light. I have a particular personal relationship with these festivals because I was born on October 31st. I'm a Scorpio, and October 31st is the traditional date for celebrating Samhain in the Northern Hemisphere. Samhain is the old word for what became Halloween. So now we see Halloween as a big commercial festival. And sure, it's fun, but Samhain represents something much deeper. Samhain honors death in all of its complexity. It honors death as part of life, and part of that is honoring our ancestors and our beloved dead. So yeah, I was born on October 31st and had no concept of Beltaine at that time as a kid. I was born in 1966, so, I'm having birthday parties in the 70s and throwing these Halloween birthday parties. And this was a really obscure thing to do because Halloween wasn't a thing in Australia at that time. It was considered an American festival. It just really wasn't recognised at all But I'd hooked into it with my Halloween birthday. So I was having these fun parties with my school friends. We'd dress up, sometimes as spooky Halloween things, but oftentimes as fairies and, magical creatures. And we'd wander the streets and knock on doors and do trick or treating. And more often than not, the folks who answered the doors would have no idea why these weird kids were turning up on their doorstep asking them to give us things. They didn't know what to do. Sometimes they'd just go to their pantry and, give us a tin of beans or something. Sometimes we'd get lollies, candy, sometimes way too much, sometimes none at all. So it was kind of bizarre. But it also began my love of community gatherings to honor the seasons. I began following my pagan spiritual path in my mid-20s. And at that time, there weren't too many books around that were referencing the Southern Hemisphere. There'd be books about the Wheel of the Year, and they would just say, Yule is December 21st. I'm thinking, well, not for us here in Australia, it's not. That's midsummer. So now there's lots of books that reference the Southern Hemisphere as well, but not so much back then. But thankfully, somehow I picked up that the thing to do was to flip the festivals 6 months. So midsummer is June rather than December. Lammas is February rather than August. So I had no trouble at all doing this for all the festivals on the wheel, except Beltaine and Samhain. I was so anchored, my Scorpio fixed self was so determined that I was born on Halloween that I'd be flipping every other festival, but just couldn't let go of this idea of my Samhain birthday. Then I threw my first big Beltaine party and thought, oh, this is just as wonderful as Samhain. And now, of course, I follow whatever the land is doing. If it's autumn, I celebrate autumn. If it's spring, I celebrate spring. So now I live in the Northern Hemisphere, and of course I get my Samhain birthday now. But a couple of years ago, I was in Melbourne for my birthday, and, I hadn't spent a birthday in Australia in a good few years. And I was really surprised and shocked to see all this Halloween imagery in the shop windows. It was crazy. The land was springing. Flowers were everywhere. Melbourne's beautiful in the spring. Flowering trees, beautiful gardens, bright, lovely days. And then in the shop windows, spooky skeletons and pumpkins. Pumpkins are an autumn thing. All that Halloween imagery transplanted into spring. It felt really wrong because it was a misalignment. These festivals exist to help us align with the turning of the seasons, which is nature. The first Beltane that I experienced in the Northern Hemisphere was in 2001. And it was my first international tour. And I was invited to perform at a festival in Western Massachusetts that is a really beautiful festival. It's called Rites of Spring. It's still going now. It's been running for more than 40 years, and it's a truly superb festival. I hit the jackpot with that as my first pagan festival. So Western Massachusetts is a particularly beautiful part of the world. The forests are absolutely gorgeous around there, east coast of the USA. And I got to the land, to the site where this festival was held, and it was beautiful land. The festival was held around a lake, and the grounds connected with the Appalachian Trail. So a lot of gorgeous forest, so many beautiful trees. But what shocked me was just how incredibly bright everything was. Everything was lime green. It was iridescent, fluorescent. Coming from Melbourne, the forests that I was used to were the eucalyptus forests, grey-green, subtle colours, crunchy and crackly. exquisite in their own way. But here was this springtime forest that was making my eyes pop. It was so bright. I really had never seen anything like it. I was amazed. And I felt very at home there. I felt very welcomed by the community. I danced my first maypole, and aligning with the energy of Beltaine, I also fell in love and returned to Australia after that tour and maintained a letter writing relationship with that sweetheart, and then went back to America 6 months later to meet up with him again. And it was a whole different story. All the hopes and excitement that I'd poured into that bright, green, sweet, new love had suddenly disappeared. I was heartbroken. This person who was so sweet in the spring was so cruel in the autumn. I was bereft. I didn't know what to do. And also remember that I was there in October of 2001, and so Samhain was only 6 weeks or so after the terrible attacks of September 11 on the Twin Towers. So my heart was broken, but so was all of America's. I found myself grieving in this grieving land. And what had been vivid green 6 months before had completely transformed into something equally beautiful, but so different. Now it was deep autumn, and the fall colours that Western Massachusetts is so renowned for, the deep reds and golds of the forest, coloured everything. So in my grief and loneliness, I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know people in the area. I felt shipwrecked, washed up on this shore. So I reached out to the people who ran that Rites of Spring festival. They are really beautiful people. And, called them distressed and said, I don't know what to do. And they said, get on a bus and come out to this place in Western Massachusetts, our property here, and take a couple of weeks to find your feet again. And I did just that. And I went to their property, and it was all maple forest, and it was utterly, utterly beautiful. And the people that ran this festival and owned this property were both Scorpios as well. So we had this really deep understanding of this season, of this time, and also of loss, of grief, of death, and all the outward energy that I'd experienced at springtime at Beltaine became this inward energy, this quiet, reflective energy where I processed my heartbreak in amongst those beautiful maples on this sacred land. It was incredible. It was there, actually, that I wrote the bulk of my album, The Lotus Eaters. I felt like Odysseus on this journey, washed up on strange shores, trying to find my way back to home, to heart. It was a really powerful time. And I think that very visceral image of the shift from bright spring to deep autumn imprinted within me that realization of the polarity and yet connection between Beltaine and Samhain, those golden and red leaves that I was witnessing at Samhain were the very same leaves that were bright green 6 months prior. Life and death inseparable. But I'm here in the Northern Hemisphere now, and it is springtime. It is Beltaine time. With all my travel back and forth across the hemispheres, my way of staying aligned with the wheel of the year is to honour wherever I am. Sometimes I get 2 Beltaines in a year, sometimes 2 midsummers, sometimes even 2 midwinters. But it's Beltaine here right now. So I'm going to honour that by exploring this Beltaine energy and always with the awareness that it's also simultaneously Samhain. So Beltaine, this festival that is life, that is fertility, that is the creative life force. And this isn't just about the fertility of reproduction. It is that, but it's not just that. The land is fertile at this time. But that fertility within us is the creative force. There's a sense of creative abundance at Beltaine. And this can be expressed as art and story and dance, just as much as it can be expressed through sexuality. Beltaine celebrates the energy of desire, leaning out to connect with something else, with someone else. And I think all creativity has an element of desire. We desire to make a thing that's never existed before, a leaning out outside of ourselves to externalize what's within. In the Northern Hemisphere, Beltaine coincides with the Taurus season, and Taurus is the energy of sensuality, of the senses connecting with the physical world. It's a creative energy. Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus, who is Aphrodite to the Greeks. When Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was born from the sea foam, she emerged on the island of Cyprus, and as her feet touched the earth, with every step, flowers would bloom. This is the energy of potent life force. Beltaine is a time of sacred union. It's complementary forces joining together. That might be the sun and the earth. It might be two lovers. Whenever these two complementary forces come together, a new energy is created, like rubbing two sticks together to make fire. In modern paganism, when we celebrate Beltaine, we can move beyond that dated idea of the union being God and goddess, male and female, chalice and blade. No, this union transcends gender. This is life force itself. We can harness this Beltaine energy with another or within ourselves too. We can feel that creative force rising up within us. In Greek mythology, we see this union as the sky, Uranos, and the earth, Gi, Gaia. We see this energy as Zeus and Hera coming together as lovers. There's a beautiful passage in the Iliad that speaks of them making love and the earth actually growing soft grasses and flowers around them to aid their lovemaking and express this fertile energy that this coming together of complementary forces creates in the world. We so often hear in Greek myth these stories of Zeus and Hera as bickering lovers, of infidelities and anger, but at their core they are representations of sky and earth. Zeus is that energizing lightning bolt that actually brings fertility to the land. Actual lightning increases nitrogen in the air, which is then eaten up by plants, turned into life and growth. And Hera is the great goddess herself. One of the largest temple complexes in the ancient Greek world was dedicated to Hera on the island of Samos. She's much more than simply Zeus's wife or queen of the gods. She's goddess herself. So she is life and death, like all these complex ancient goddesses are, like Gaia is, like Demeter is. They are the spirit of the living land, which is both life and death. So every year here at our home, Meadowlark in northern New Mexico, we throw a Beltaine party. And one of the first things that I did when we moved in here about 5 years ago was to install a maypole. And our land is, it's the desert. It's rocky and quite harsh, beautiful big vistas. You can see every horizon. It's gorgeous. But it's definitely not the lush, lovely green of England when the maypole tradition emerged from Europe. It's a very different land. The maypole is really a medieval tradition. It's mentioned from about the 1400s onward. So not really Celtic, but we've adapted this in modern paganism to say this is part of the Beltane season. It's a symbol of seasonal fertility. So essentially it's this pole going into the earth, and that symbolism is pretty obvious of this union of opposites. And then each year the maypole is taken out of the earth and we tie fresh ribbons to it. And then as a community, we gather round and we dance the maypole. And these ribbons twirl and dance and crisscross. And no matter how hard we try, it's always chaos and laughter. And we make flower crowns, fresh flowers or maybe silk flowers. And we dress in our spring finery. And we have this amazing celebration of springtime. It's a lovely point on our seasonal calendar, and we all really, really look forward to it. And weather permitting, I also like to leap the fire at Beltaine, and Beltaine is a fire festival. So one of the traditions associated with it is that you leap over a little fire and it kind of energizes and celebrates that creative force. This party that we hold every year or most years, it's not just the pagan community who comes along. A lot of my friends aren't actively pagan, but they still love to celebrate the turning of the wheel. It's part of our human DNA to celebrate in some way the changes in nature. I think it's really important for us to make our own traditions for these festivals, drawing on the past, but bringing them into the present. And the cross-quarter days aren't an exact moment in the same way that the solstices and equinoxes are. They're more a seasonal marker, so you could choose to celebrate these festivals when you notice a natural marker in the landscape around you. Maybe it's when that particular flower blooms, or those particular apples ripen, or that bird returns to your land. Or maybe you might like to celebrate at the full moon closest to this time, and that's always going to pick up on that polarity that the full moon is always in the opposite sign of the sun. I think this is especially helpful for those in the southern hemisphere. I certainly felt that when I lived there. Celebrating with the full moon means that we're tapping into the astrological sign that is traditionally associated with the symbolism of the festival that you're celebrating. For example, Samhain coming up in the southern hemisphere, it's going to be when the sun is in Taurus. But if you celebrate with the full moon, you'll tap into that Scorpio energy of death, of transformation. If you're in the northern hemisphere and don't happen to have access to a lovely maypole, you can do some great fun rituals, leaping over that little campfire, or some candle magic is great for Beltane, anointing a candle with rose oil or jasmine or lang lang that connect with that Venusian energy of the season. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's a very beautiful time to make an altar for your beloved dead. That's something I always do at Samhain. I set up an altar with photographs, or I write the name or memories or any kind of objects associated with ancestors or beloved dead, and just spend some time honoring that, giving thanks to those who came before us. Another lovely Samhain tradition is the silent supper, where we create a feast honoring the gifts of the land and then eat in complete silence, in respect and reverence for our beloved dead. We acknowledge that we are the ones alive right now, able to eat, able to partake of the delicious foods of the earth, and also recognize that our time will come, that we'll cross through that veil, and maybe we'll be honoured on someone else's Samhain altar. So before we dive into this episode's tarot reading, let's do a little meditation, get ourselves in the zone, connect with the energy of the right here, right now, and of course this reminder of whenever you're listening to this, it may no longer be that Beltaine, Samhain time of year. That doesn't matter, it'll come around again. Just see how that speaks to you right now. These themes that have been brought up about life and death being part of the one great energy that is the life-death-life cycle. All right, let's take our awareness to our breath and feel the energy of our bodies, the physicality of our being, breathing into the right here and right now. And let's consciously take our awareness down, 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 down to Earth's center. Down from the base of our spines, down into Earth's surface. Down, 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 through layers of soil and rock. Down, down, down to Earth's fiery red core. No matter where you are on Earth, we all meet at this center. Whether it's spring or autumn, Beltaine or Samhain, whether you're northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere, our energy meets at Earth's red core. We share this same planet. We're part of its same dance of life and death and life. We are Earth. We are Earthlings. All right, I am going to shuffle these tarot cards now and see what is it that the universe would like to remind us right now. What is it that would be helpful to be aware of? Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see what is on the top. It's always a little exciting to see what this is, and it is the Two of Wands. I really like this card. Okay, the image from the Rider-Waite Pamela Coleman Smith deck has a man standing on the ramparts of a castle. He's dressed in beautiful robes, and in his hand he is holding a sphere that is Earth, that is Gaia. That's an interesting connection with the meditation we just did. He's holding on to one wand, and another is anchored to the castle wall. He's gazing out on a sea. The landscape looks quite soft, nothing menacing. He's gazing pensively, kind of gazing out across this world globe that he's holding in his hand. To me, this speaks of possibility, the whole world in our hands. But it also speaks of preparedness, of getting ready for something. One of those wands, and wands represents fire in the tarot, one of those wands is anchored to that castle wall, and the other is like he's hankering to get going out on the next adventure, but not quite ready yet. It's a time for planning and for preparing. In a way, I think this aligns nicely with this turning of the wheel of Beltaine and Samhain. Where is our energy going to go? What are we going to do with this? Where to now? We spoke about desire a little earlier and creativity being linked with desire. So where do I desire to go? What do I desire to do? There's a sense of kind of being pulled in two directions here. The safety of staying where we are and the pull of adventure to move beyond that safety zone. The world is a big place full of amazing adventures. There's so much to explore. I think this card is saying that's possible. It's time to prepare yourself to move on to the next adventure, whatever that might be. Whatever it is that you're creating or making. Doesn't have to be a literal journey, it can be, but it's saying, hey, it's time for growth. Start preparing, start planning, gather your resources, dream into your possibilities. There's so much of the world to see. Thanks for hanging out with me here on this episode of Darkness and Light. Of course, once again, a little reminder that this podcast is supported by my Patreon community. If you head over to my Patreon page, and there'll be a link in the show notes, you can check that out. And next Monday on my Patreon Magic Monday video, I'm going to dive deeper into this card. We can explore together all the symbolism within that card and what it might mean for us right now. And that's my way of giving back to my wonderful Patreon community who allow this podcast to be ad-free. So yeah, head over there, tune in. There's years and years of videos, full moon magic concerts, Magic Monday tarot readings and songs that you can access once you become a member for just the price of a cup of coffee each month. I would love to see you over there, and I will see you back here in 2 weeks' time for the next episode of Darkness and Light. And we are going to be exploring the power of letting go as the moon is waning toward the Taurus dark moon, that embodied sensual energy of Taurus, and we're going to be guided by Aphrodite. I'll see you back here then. Blessed be.